Okay, so veil and double consciousness, that's what your first discussion board post should be on. Okay, looking at that idea. Okay, now and then it becomes an issue of like, well, where do you want to locate your argument, your commentary on double consciousness and the veil, right? So you have uh, forethought chapter one, and then you have chapters three and six to work with, right? So in the forethought chapter one, that's where he's dealing with it in a primary way. Um, but a lot of times it's not the easiest thing to do, right? To sort of um, get on top of a concept when it's directly being spoken about. So a tip that I would give you is that always try to look for how a concept is being used in maybe a secondary way or uh, in a way that's not so primary, and sometimes you get a better hold on it. So one way to look at this, okay, another, beyond just locating your analysis in the forethought in chapter one, you could think about the musical epigraphs, okay? So the musical epigraphs, right? An epigraph is what precedes, what is between the title and the actual chapter. And so before every chapter, right, Du Bois has um, an epigraphic um, module, okay? And it's always the same, right? It's always like a poem, right? And here he identifies who the poet is, and then there's musical notation, right? And the musical notation is unidentified, okay? So the poem, we oftentimes see this in an epigraphic form, right? So Arthur Symons, no one knows who he is nowadays, but he was a famous poet in the 19th century, or a poet who was referenced in the 19th century. So basically, all the poems here are basically from Intellectual Heritage 101, all the things that you should read or need to read in Western culture. Of Du Bois's time, right? So he's referencing things here, famous poems that any educated person in the late 19th century would know. Okay, and then he's juxtaposing it, and notice the term I use there, juxtaposing it, right, uh, with the musical notation. So a lot of times you do see epigraphs that have more than one quotation or citation there, and usually they sort of work together. So you write an epigraph, or you put an epigraph there to sort of give a dimension to the whole chapter that you're dealing with.